It's another episode of the Square and Compass podcast. Back across the pond. I've been across the pond in England to speak with Martin Fox. But now a little bit north of that, we're in Scotland, speaking with Brother Stephen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Brother Cameron. It's fantastic to be here.
So you are the treasurer, I know, of your lodge. Uh, tell us, tell us the names of your Masonic lodges.
Okay, well, I am a Master Mason, and my mother lodge is Lodge St. Duthis number 82 and 10, which is within the province of Ross and Cromarty, which is just north of Inverness in the Highlands of Scotland.
And I had the chance to meet you through Brother Randy Sanders at his Masonic Happy Hours, which are terrific events, and Masons should check them out. I'll leave a link to Brother Sanders' video, so check him out as well. There's a lot of really cool things I want to talk to you about, but the main thing I want to talk to you about, because this is something that I have been really pushing in Canada and really encouraging other lodges to consider, is the digital archiving of Masonic documents. I mean, whether it be Scotland, England, Canada, the United States, there are, hundreds, centuries and centuries worth of documents, letters, archives, minute books, registers, that lodges and Masonic buildings are sitting on. And knock on wood, so many of them are one disaster, a fire, an energetic mouse away from being damaged and perhaps destroyed. And having a backup of those documents seems so important. So can you just start by telling us about kind of your contributions to the digital archiving process for your lodges and in your neck of the woods, and kind of where that process is right now and where you hope that digital archiving goes in the future?
Yes, thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to emphasize on your opening statements there about the need for having lodge archives digitized. There's a plethora of different reasons right now that it's almost appropriate to consider digitizing one's lodge archive. We had a discussion one evening. Our lodge was in dark during the COVID pandemic. It had gone into darkness for 18 months, and we shut down in March 2000 and reopened again in October of 2001. So it was just before Christmas. Online, we were having a discussion as to the possibility of having our lodge records, i.e. our books and other important records, archived. And I was tasked with the job of going and researching the different possibilities. So and the aim was to have them physically archived in our archive centre, and whether it would be the Highland Archive Centre or the National Archive Centre in Scotland. It was kind of a toss-up between the two. So ideally, we want access to the archives. Now, when you put your archive, especially in Scotland, when you deposit your archives into the archive centre, there is two options that you can have. It's either hand over your records lock and stock to the archives and let them keep them forever, and it's up to them as to how they manage the archives, with you getting, or the lodge getting, access to the archives on request or for demonstrations and displays and such like. Or you can deposit your archives into the archive centre and pay for the maintenance and upkeep. Every now and again, there's just general maintenance of your records and pay for the storage. So there's long distances between lodges and archive centres. So such a thing wasn't that practical. So we decided to look into the possibility of having our lodge archives digitized. So I contacted a few digital archiving companies within Scotland and got rough quotes of the amount of archiving we require for our lodge. We're the oldest lodge in the province. We got our charter in 1763, although our records start from 1761. And so we have by far the largest amount of archives. And so the average quote was somewhere around £1,500, 15 to £1,600. Now, I'm not too sure what that is in Canadian. It's a fair price for the average lodge to fork out. And that was the lowest end average. And so I shopped around and see if I could come up with a better option. And it was just by coincidence, and I'm a believer that there's no such thing in coincidence. That evening I was watching the Masonic Round Table, and it was concentrating that evening on digitizing lodge archives. And it was Brother Alex Powers who was giving a presentation on how the Kansas Research Lodge, or the Grand Lodge of Kansas, please don't shoot me for if I'm wrong, the setup that they had done. And he talked through getting a machine, an overhead laser book scanner, which I can perhaps show you, or maybe I can't, it's fixed on the phone, but it's called a Seizure ET18 Pro, which is an overhead laser book scanner. And I managed to, they're made in Germany, and there is one outlet in Scotland that you can purchase them from. So I contacted them, and they gave me a quote for a reconditioned one. Now, reconditioned being that it was sold a little bit too complicated for the user, and they returned it, and had maybe 2 hours use on it. And so we decided to buy this and go ahead and buy a scanner and a bulk document scanner, and a printer that can print out DVDs and CDs. The initial idea was to digitize the lodge records, mount them onto PDF books, searchable PDF books, and then mount them onto DVDs and into DVD cases, print out the lodge records and the contents and such like onto the DVD cases, the dual cases we call them over here. And that isn't that practical, to be perfectly honest. And there was a little, I had to reevaluate that idea, because most laptops these days don't actually come with DVD drives or CD drives on them. So that wasn't the best option. So I purchased a little home server called a MyCloud, which is a network assisted server. So now I can digitize the lodge records, have them stitched into searchable PDF books, and mount them onto my own server. And that can serve 2 purposes. One, the secretary of the lodge who has asked for the lodge records to be archived, I can just throw them a link, and they can view and download the whole archive, the whole folder, straight onto their computer, and they can mount it onto any medium that they like, which kind of solves that problem. And so, to cut a long story short, I managed to purchase all the equipment I need to digitize not only my lodge, but any other lodge, primarily the lodges in the province, for less than the value it was for a commercial quote to digitize my lodge archives.
Have you found that how are the lodges and what do lodges prefer in terms of the finished product? Do you find that lodges generally prefer the link that where they can download the information, or are some lodges asking for the information to be put on USB sticks, or what is the nature of delivery? Or are lodges primarily going for the downloadable link?
Well, to be perfectly honest, Brother Cameron, that hurdle hasn't come up yet, because the digital archiving program, we've set up just a little label for it. It's called St. Duthus Digital Archiving. It's still very much in its infancy. I've only at the moment finished digitizing my lodge records, and we have interest from another lodge. The idea or the idea for the switchover came from words from people who are more wise than me. They're they've had much more experience in these matters. Primarily, Brother Robert Cooper. He was giving a presentation to a lodge in South Africa about digitizing the Grand Lodge records, and that's more for preservation rather than having them scanned onto PDF books. If you're going to do these projects, Brother Bob Cooper does these things properly, and we'd like the backs broken of them and rebound at the same time, and therefore preserving the actual physical records as well as digitizing them. So anyway, we were having just a brief conversation after the presentation, and I was asking him about what would be the most suitable medium to upload the finished records, and he recommended a server, and so that's what I've done. I've got a server, and now all of the records of all of the provinces, if need, or within all the province, if need be, can be mounted on my server, and then as a backup be mounted on to the Grand Lodge servers. And should any research inquiries be made, then I can either put the link out for one page of one image, or a book, or a whole lodge's books, or a whole province's books. It just depends on the level of the research. And there's also other little gimmicks, I tend to call them. If, for example, you have an inquiry from a fellow brother overseas, perhaps inquiring as to whether their great-grandfather was in their lodge, then I've got all the petitions scanned. So not only I can confirm or deny whether their great-grandfather was in the lodge, I can provide them with a copy of their petition, just as a little gift.
That is very, very cool. For your lodge, what is the oldest document or set of documents that you've digitized?
Our very first mint book, which starts 1761.
And were there any? You mentioned the kind of the equipment that you're using, but did you find practically as you were going through the digital process, were there any technical challenges? I mean, were there problems with the books being bent or ink faded, and how did you deal with some of those?
Well, not so much with not so much of a problem with the books being damaged. We happen to be very fortunate in the British Isles, and we have, one would say, the perfect climate for preserving paper. Whereas in the Middle East or in Americas, there's a higher or lower amount of humidity levels and such like. Therefore, extra precautions have to be taken to preserve papers and manuscripts and such like. But it appears that our records can last quite a long time just sitting in a cupboard without too much damage. So there wasn't that much problems with the scanning. With the first two books, one or two of the pages had frayed edges, and therefore the algorithm that detects the shape of the page sometimes wouldn't quite catch the edge, therefore it would jump. And to solve that problem, I just put a bit of white paper underneath it just to make the square and blot that out. I changed that background black to match the rest of the black background. Fortunately, there wasn't too many damaged pages like that. I'm not too sure if you can turn the algorithm off. I haven't actually looked into it. I imagine there would be a way, a little hack, not something that would be within the program anyway. But I would imagine there would be a way that you could switch the algorithm off. One of the other things as well is oversized books. And our standard lodge record books, aside from our expenses books, because they're quite sort of square, big and square, they're generally just a little over A4 size. So when you open them up to scan a double page, it's a little over A3 size, which is just outside the specifications, the scanning specifications of the scanner itself. So I've just raised the scanner on a black book, maybe about 1.25 inches, which sort of enlarges the specifications. So if any engineer from Seashore would be listening to this in the future, a tweak I would recommend is an extendable neck. So you can just raise the height of the scanner and therefore create a larger scanning surface. But that problem can be easily resolved just by raising the scanner up to the desired height. It's got 18 megapixel laser image, so raising the lens by a couple of inches doesn't really affect the quality at all. And in fact, it doesn't affect the quality at all. I'm not too sure if I've come across any other problems, just a few little technical hiccups with the software. The first edition software that I had with the scanner, unbeknownst to me, every time I finished using the software and shut it down, it would just delete the folder, the whole working folder. So I was a little bit eager when I first got it, and was scanning and scanning and scanning and scanning, and thought I'd done a good day's work and shut it down, only to find that there was no material there the following morning. An update solved that problem. That's not a problem. Aside from that, it's been quite easy running so far. It's not a quick project.
No, I'm sure it wouldn't be, but it's definitely a worthwhile project. Have you shown the work done so far? Like, have you presented it to your lodge or to members, officers in your lodge, and what were their thoughts?
Yes, I have. I haven't presented the complete package because there isn't a complete package as such. I'm going to mine them onto the cloud. But yes, I presented the work to the lodge. They were really impressed with it. I've had 3 inquiries so far. Brother Alex Craig is the past master of Lodge Fingal in Dingwall, which is in our province, the province of Ross and Cromarty. And they were coming up to, or they are coming up to, a very important anniversary. And he was doing a history of the lodge. And our lodge is the oldest lodge in the province. And there's one more, Lodge Seaforth, and then Lodge Fingal, which is the 3rd oldest. And so our records were really useful because the visitation left our lodge to go to Dingwall, and the whole journey was described, the train journey to Dingwall, who was on it and what they did afterwards and such like. So those things are quite fantastic. Our secretary of our own lodge is doing a presentation next month on parts of the history of our lodge, and those archives are really useful to him as well. We've had a few inquiries of who has been in our lodge in the past, and I have confirmed those inquiries and sent the official certification to the inquirer, and they find it most useful. And these inquiries can now be sorted within minutes rather than going to the lodge, looking through the books, coming back, writing down the information, coming back and making a phone call to confirm either way. I can now just flick through. If I get a couple of dates as a parameter, I can quite easily find that on my laptop and just email him the verification there and then. And so it's very useful.
Well, that's I think it's like I was saying at the start, right? And I'll leave a link to it, right? Every Masonic temple, lodge, group, whatever it is, they're sitting on documents that could be hundreds of years old, a few hundred years old, and it's one disaster, one fire, one whatever it might be from possibly losing that information.
Yes.
Zanesville, Ohio is an example. It was a great shame, but their Masonic temple, I don't know the cause of the fire, but was set on fire, and they lost hundreds of years worth of documents that they just can't get back. And obviously you want the originals, but the information is valuable too, and you want that information protected somewhere else.
Yes, most definitely. I heard about that, and that's tragic, absolutely tragic, and for that need especially. And
so on, let's switch over a little bit and talk about some happier news. In Ontario, we are slowly but surely and safely, returning to in-person meetings. I know you mentioned at the start, right, that in Scotland you had been, you had not had in-person meetings for approximately 18 months. Has in-person Freemasonry returned to Scotland, and what's that return been like thus far?
Well, the craft masonry specifically, I will talk of craft masonry. We were given the green light to resume meetings in October, just last October, and we're very cautious. We have all lodges were instructed to purchase a fogger, a fogging machine, so they could fog the lodge after each meeting or after each event. We have masks. All brethren wear masks in the lodge, aside from when they're giving their lecture. And hand sanitization. Now, we have within the province quite a lot of elderly brethren who still need to be shielded to an extent, although the shielding period within Scotland is now over. We're still aware that there's many brethren over 70 within the province, and so real care needs to be taken. Now, Grand Lodge did come out with some guidelines that when the lodges reopen, that if people didn't feel comfortable with returning to lodge for whatever reason, shielding themselves, shielding their family members, work routines changed about. It's been a crazy time over the last 2 years in Scotland. A lot of things have changed, and so that's every brethren is respected in the decision during these times, because it's not for any other brethren to decide whether or not another brethren can or cannot come to lodge during such circumstances. And so that being said, especially within our lodge, our province, I don't know about other provinces, the pickup or the return to lodge hasn't been as quick as I would have expected. There are still a few absent brethren, and absent by way of haven't returned. And yes, it's a struggle for the lodge to fulfill its duties, put brethren through their degrees. We're a small province anyway. We're a rural province, so we do rely on inter-lodge visitation, and sometimes do have to rely on brethren from other lodges coming in and helping us with the ritual. That seems to, in my opinion, I'm only 3 years in the craft, 3 years this month. I can see it becoming a little bit of a struggle some evenings to fulfill our duties. But that's not a problem. That's just something that needs to be managed. And we're managing it quite successfully at the moment by relying on each other's lodges within the province. And I feel we shall be doing that for maybe just a little while more in the future, and until people are confident enough to come back to lodge.
I mean, and do you think that's just a matter of or how much of that comes from just the length of time that lodges in Scotland were dark? Habits can be very hard to break, and it's pretty easy, I think, to form a habit in 18 months. So if brethren get used to not attending in-person meetings, or if Freemasonry kind of stops becoming a part of somebody's life for 18 months, it's just rebuilding a habit of attendance. How much of it do you think is that, versus how much of it do you think is there's still a level of fear from some of the older members? I mean, where do you see the reluctance or the slow start, the slow return, I should say, coming from?
I actually think it's a bit of both. With the younger brethren. I say younger brethren, those that are maybe under 50. That's the kind of split that I choose. The younger brethren, yes, maybe it's because they're not in the habit of going to lodge. They haven't continued with or was it necessary really to continue with brushing up on their bits and pieces that they need to brush up on. And so, yes, perhaps habit made one or two of them find it difficult to return to normality. I don't believe with the older brethren that it's breaking the habit, because the older brethren, they love the lodge, and it's a lot more of whether or not they feel safe, or their partners feel safe, or many of their family members, and it's a bit of both, yes. I think this is my own personal observations that those who don't want to return won't return, and those who do want to return will return. There's not much we can do. We just have to respect that decision and manage things accordingly. I do believe that the difficulties you're talking about and the difficulties I'm observing are only for the moment. This time period is to prepare for something better.
So going back to, actually, this is one question I meant to ask, and I forgot. So we'll go back to the digital side of the world for a moment. For yourself personally, did you have or how much of a learning curve was there in terms of learning how to use the equipment, learning how to use the software? Did you already have experience digitizing things in the past, or was to what extent was the work user friendly and intuitive, and just what was the learning curve like for digitizing these documents?
Well, the hardware itself is relatively easy, provided you have some understanding of computers, and for the scanner, it wasn't really a problem. The software itself is quite basic. The controls are quite basic. Um, so that's relatively easy. When you get to the printer's Wi-Fi, setting that up and running that just speaks for itself. It's just you just put in the software and off it goes. And I only put in the software because it was quicker than using the automatic download. So the printer works. Everything you want it to do, it just does it itself. The bulk document scanner is a completely different beast. It comes with another different package of OCR, which is optical character recognition software, far superior than the laser scanner, the book scanner. To be honest, it's got the Abbey suite with quite an exceptional OCR. Now it can pick up it can pick up a few more, substantially more characters within the old records than the OCR software that's built into the seizure scanner. And so the algorithms are improving. But with the bulk scanner, what you can do is you can up to 50 documents of any size. It could be A4, business cards, invitations, receipts, anything at all. And you just pop them in the top and it'll come out and it will sort them into all the different categories that you've asked them to be sorted into. So if you've got maybe 25, 30 receipts in a pile of documents, they'll be allocated their different folders as you set them. So it's quite advanced, the Brother ADS 300N. But once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy. I can imagine somebody maybe 20 or 30 years my senior would have difficulties with it. But yes, they're pretty straightforward. They're pretty straightforward for me anyway.
So yeah, that leads to, I think, with anything in Freemasonry, one concern when you want to try something new, something different, right? One of the concerns is always brothers feel like they may not be qualified to try it, or they don't want to take the risk. So, for any lodges that are considering digital archiving, but are concerned that they may not be able to use the equipment or figure out how it works. I mean, what would you say to them? Obviously, if these lodges are in Scotland, I would say get in touch with Brother Stephen, because he can do the digital archiving. But for lodges in Canada, United States, where shipping these documents to Scotland might not be particularly efficient, like what would you say to lodges that are looking at or considering digitization but are concerned about not having the expertise to do so?
Just go for it. I didn't have the expertise to do so either. If I made myself out to be some kind of expert, then I do apologize. I'm computer literate. You turn it on and don't have to struggle too much around the different specifications. But yes, when I first got the equipment, it was I was terrified. Even gently taking them out of the boxes in case I damaged them, let alone switching them on. It was. Yes, it was quite a nervous couple of hours, to be honest. But once they're all turned on and you get them all the software loaded up, fortunately, everything went according to plan, and so that was a great help. And just have a go. It's not that difficult. You get the book, you put it underneath the scanner, you press the pedal. If you don't get it right in the middle, then you just take another shot, and you take another shot. And That's all I can say. They're pretty sturdy pieces of equipment, and just do not be scared. And if you are coming into troubles and not knowing what to do or what to do next, then I encourage brethren who are giving the digital archiving project a go to contact me or contact you, Brother Cameron, and get put in touch with me, because I am only too happy to sit and spend a couple of hours going step by step by step by step. And I'm only too happy to go over it again and again and again. And so,
And I can throw your contact info in the description down below, your email. So if any brothers want to contact you, or they can contact me and I can get them in touch with you. I can throw my email address down there.
Yes, most definitely.
And then get in touch with me, and I can get you in touch with Brother Stephen if you have any questions about the digital archiving.
Yes. Now we do have. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
There is a kind of business plan for St. Duth's digital archiving, and it's a sliding scale from £300 to £900, and that's it. The high end is £900. Now, like I say, we're the largest lodge, we're the oldest lodge in the province, and have the largest amount of archive. As it stands, archiving our lodge, it's about a year to archive the record. And the lodge that is showing interest has 14 books. Now, that's not high end in my view. So that would be a kind of pricing of maybe £600 to £700. Now, the prices are kept deliberately low because there's a real need to have the lodge records digitized, and those low prices are to pay for the purchase of machinery and the overheads involved. Now, the Gothic Digital Archiving doesn't keep all of the funds. You pay directly to our secretary, and the lodge itself gets 1/3, and I get the 2/3. And a lot of that 2/3 go towards the expenditure. So I've kind of worked out it's going to be somewhere along the lines of £3.33 an hour, and just a couple of hours a day scanning, 3 or 4 days a week. And that's enough just to click through, and you keep on going, you keep on going. So if a lodge is got maybe 4 record books, then we'll see to lower the lower end of that scale. But that's it. It's that simple. If lodges are struggling with those fees, then naturally, because there's a need to archive the records within the province, then some arrangement can be made. So it's not by any means commercial masonry. It's very much a labor of love. And,
as all masonry is, for sure.
Yeah.
The what was I going to say next? Oh, so there's the digitization, scanning of documents, which is, obviously incredibly important. But one thing I've been thinking about more recently is, for example, the Windsor Masonic Temple has a museum. We have a lot of physical artifacts dating from, Freemasonry in Windsor dates to about 1854. So we've got lots of Masonic jewels and working tools and different items that we display. And I've been thinking more and more perhaps about trying to digitally preserve those in 3D format, taking pictures of them. I'm not sure if you started working on anything like that, or if that's something that's been done with either with your lodge or with any lodge you know of. But that is something I've been thinking about adding. We probably need a digital camera, something to that effect. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if there's anything if there's any artifacts that your lodge has attempted to preserve digitally to keep a record of.
We've had formal discussions of photographing everything in the lodge, for two reasons actually. First, to have a digital archive of all things in the lodge, i.e., photographs, jewels, presentations, silverware and such like. The other reason is for insurance purposes. I'm sure there's many lodges that have suffered a similar experience as the lodge you mentioned, i.e., going on fire. If anything, I recommend you photograph these things solely for insurance purposes. So you can have proof that these things were in the lodge's possession and could not be retrieved from the lodge. Secondly, it makes for quite a digital archive. We have discussed photographing everything, but we haven't quite got that far yet. Having a professional camera is probably not that necessary these days because modern phones have just as good a camera for such a project. Now, the Seizure scanner can probably cater for most of your scanning requirements in that field, other than silver bowls and flaggings and such like, jewels and certificates and photographs and such like, or certain photographs can just be laid down and scanned, and that would be a more than adequate digital archive of it. We do have the capabilities here to scan photographs on the software within the Epson scanner. It repairs all the scratches and minor defects within the photograph. I was thinking about getting the Epson Perfection, the V600 or 6, the V6, and that's got all the hardware necessary for digitizing photographs, almost from the time photographs evolved from glass slides. It's got all the different frames and such like. So quite a lot of the things that you talk of can be managed by the initial hardware bought. If you want to photograph your flag and your bowls and your silverware, yes, just mount it on a black backing and a black screen and take a photograph in panoramic view with a more modern camera on the phone. That would be more than sufficient. Yeah.
So what is next for you? Do you have any meetings coming up? You are the treasurer, so I'm guessing that keeps you busy. But
yes, it does. Yeah.
What's on the agenda for you Masonically?
Well, I don't know actually. Like I say, I've just been in the craft 3 years this month. It was 3 years last Monday. We were locked down for 18 months. So within the lockdown, I've been busy. I've been, our provincial Grand Master, Brother Raymond Keddy, launched a Young Masons education program during the lockdown. And we used to meet up through Zoom. All brethren under the age 3 years and under within the craft were welcome to attend and to receive lodge education, so to speak. And so during lockdown, had a lot of time in my hands, and some of the projects that we were talking, or some of the parts of ritual we were talking about, we were tasked to go away and write little things. And so I've written 3 or 4 papers now, had an article published in 4 or 5 4 Masonic magazines now. Naturally, I've set up the digital archiving company. Since been installed as treasurer in my lodge, and last week I went through my second part of initiation into the Holy Royal Arch, which was fantastic. So what the future holds, I don't know. I've just been installed as treasurer, and I think we are looking towards digitizing much of the accounts. So over the summer recess, I'll be going through all the treasurer's records and sorting them out and putting them onto spreadsheets and sort of coming up with some kind of newer system. I don't think there's much else in the card. During lockdown, I've been the NHS volunteer for the area, providing support, delivering meals, shopping, prescriptions, a plethora of different tasks.
Which is, I mean, that's one of those things, right? It's one of those examples of the way that Freemasonry Freemasons can support their communities and their membership and just community in general, right? Even during challenging circumstances, right? As opposed to just sitting and complaining or whatever it is about the situation that is out of your control, right? Taking active steps to help people with whatever they need, groceries, prescriptions, right? That's an example of an actual taking a crummy situation and doing the best to make it okay.
Yes, well, I was working out at the Bradbury Centre. The Bradbury Centre is a daycare centre for the elderly and vulnerable within the whole Kyle of Sutherland area, which is my immediate local area. And although it's not part of the NHS, it's connected to the NHS, and the NHS have full access of the services provided. So that took up quite a bit of my time. That program, the relief, it was 18 months on that. The relief program ended in September. I'm still facilitating with keeping the local food bank stocked up. We have inter-province Masonic community care initiative where there's brethren from Scotland. I must apologise, I cannot remember the name of the lodge. And down in the south of Scotland, there's a large amount of foodstuffs and clothing and toiletries. It gets collected from the local supermarkets instead of putting them into the waste. And so we have contacts to be able to facilitate that. And then they're distributed throughout the different provinces to provide support for the different food banks and central hubs within different provinces. So that's still ongoing, and but that's just 1 or 2 days a month that I do this, or 1 or 2 days every 3 months. So I've got a fair bit of time on my hands at the moment. My lodge is making use of that. I'm learning some lectures and such like. I kind of tend to get asked to do the longest lectures at the moment. I'm sure that's a good thing.
So yeah, well, never tell your lodge that you have free time, because this is what happens.
Yes, I'm quickly learning to realize that,
Yeah, you're always busy. When the lodge says, "How are you doing?" just say busy, first of all, before you say anything else.
Yeah.
This is all kind of in the realm of digital Freemasonry, or Freemasonry in the virtual or digital world. We have seen an explosion of that due to the lockdowns and going dark. I mentioned at the start, I met you through Brother Randy Sanders, through his happy hour. He's a brother from Missouri.
Yeah.
I'm from Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and then we have yourself from Scotland, right? How did you come about learning about the Masonic happy hour and taking part in it?
Okay. Well, that was the benefits of Zoom and the Masonic, the most impressive effort by brethren to put themselves on Zoom. Now, there's a group, a Facebook group. Now, I was never a Facebook user until lockdown. I never had a Facebook account. I'm not a social media account. I don't even watch television, to be honest. And so I set up a Facebook account um, in the summer of 2020, and very quickly realized that all these different Masonic initiatives popping up uh, that coincided with their lodges in their specific countries going dark. And I came across this Facebook group called Refracted Light. I didn't come across it by accident. Even before becoming a Mason, I was an avid fan of the Masonic Round Table. And oh gosh, forgive me, the name.
Joe Martinez.
Brother Robert Johnson's
Okay.
Wednesday. Yes, and I was an avid fan of them before I became a Mason, and to be honest, that's probably what uh, influenced me to make that final step to knock on the door. I was going in that direction, and and I used to watch them on YouTube, and although I didn't watch telly, I used to watch YouTube, and so when I joined Facebook, I sought them out and added them as friends almost instantly because I really wanted to follow what they were doing because I was very impressed with the material that they were putting out. And they had formed this group called Refracted Light. And they, during the lockdown, they were putting out some excellent presentations. And so I met Brother Randy Sanders there. I do believe he is one of the founders of
He's one of the admins, I do believe. I
Yes,
know he's.
yes, sorry. And so we were on lockdown, nothing to do really. Evenings getting later and later and later, and I quite enjoyed the sort of late night conversations. Late night, I mean, by that time after refracted light presentations were over, it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning this time, and so I really enjoyed having the after presentation discussions on refracted light with the brethren, and that's how I met Randy Sanders and the happy hour. I do believe we spent a good 5 hours chatting the first time we met. Happy hour. Me and
Yeah. So, do you see? To what extent? How much do you see? Even as lodges return to in-person meetings, how much do you see the virtual meetings, the Zoom meetings, whether they be formal or informal? To what extent do you see these continuing in the years to come?
I can see them having lots and lots of uses. As it stands at the moment, I can only speak for my own province. I'm not too knowledgeable about the digital goings-ons in other provinces, but we're just stepping into the sort of digital hybrid format. Now, although our lodges are back, we're still going, we've decided to continue the Young Masons Zoom education program once a fortnight digitally, and we feel that that is an easier format to provide lodge education within the province rather than all the young Masons having to go to a specific lodge, because our province, the region of Ross and Cromarty is the largest county in the whole of the UK, I believe. most certainly in Scotland. So although we have 12 lodges within the province, they're a long way apart from each other, most of them. We have one lodge on the Outer Hebrides in Stornoway, Lodge Fortrose. We have another lodge in Alapool, which is on one side of the province. And then we've got lodges in Tame, which is on the other side. And so trying to find an appropriate time and the appropriate lodge for all the young Masons to meet in is sometimes a bit like herding sheep. But not that we've ever tried. I can see it could be something like herding sheep. And so it's much better just to throw out a Zoom link and if they're able to attend, then they can. And it would be fantastic for that aspect of Zoom to be incorporated within craft masonry for lodge education and for things like committee meetings and other things that you know, not naturally there is a place for a temple and there is a need for brethren to go to the temple, you know, a lot of that. There is some things that brethren can do online, and that needs to be encouraged.
I agree completely. Although I think with Masons, it's more like herding cat than herding sheep usually.
Yeah. Well, you said it. Yes.
Oh,
How are you feeling?
it can be a challenge, but yeah, I think you're right. I think we'll likely see some hybrid type meetings. Certainly, I think from a Grand Lodge perspective, you're going to see electronic voting and virtual voting far more common at annual communications.
That would probably solve a few problems actually, if it was voting over Zoom and such like. You know, I can see.
Yeah.
Yes, and now that the genie's out of the bottle, it's going to be quite hard to put it back in. As a matter of fact, it won't go back in. I do believe there needs to be some regulation. There's some guidelines in place for using Zoom and other digital platforms within craft masonry. People seem to be behaving themselves as far as I can see. You know, speaking about Masonic things, not necessarily on behalf of their retrospective Grand Lodges and things, but yeah, they seem to be behaving themselves quite well. So this trial period of 18 months, 2-year lockdown, the people have pretty much had a free-for-all in the grand scheme of things. It's worked well. You know, there's a lot of people who have made connections with an awful lot of other brethren now that it wouldn't have happened. You know, there's some people who are feeling maybe a little bit not quite getting the experience that they needed within the bricks and mortar lodge that they're finding online in the digital world, you know, and that's a marvelous thing.
And I think you're right, and let's hope that it continues to go well. And thank you so much for jumping, you know, virtually joining me from across the pond all the way in Scotland. You know, my dad's from England, as you know, you met him, and I've had the chance to visit England a few occasions, even Northern England, where my pops is from, but I haven't had the chance to make it to Scotland yet. For Freemasonry or any other reason. So I'd love to visit Scotland one day and hopefully visit a few lodges while I'm there.
We have the 4th International Conference coming up, and it's going to be held in Scotland, and that will be in November. And the deadline for arranging to be, or the deadline for having your name put into the oops, sorry. And the deadline for you being able to go to the international conference is running out soon. But there's brethren from all over the world attending. I'll be there also.
And that was in Edinburgh, you said?
No, it's going to be in Edinburgh, in Grand Lodge, this November. And
very cool. So that is something that's something for me to check out, and for anybody watching this to check out too. Yes. Is it open to all Masons or only Master Masons? I don't know a lot about it.
I'm not too sure. I'll have to get back to you on that.
I can check, and I'll leave a link for it in the description to the video as well.
Yeah.
But that might be the perfect time to visit Scotland, and I'll start in England, see some family, then head up to see some brothers.
Yes, most definitely. That would be fantastic. And if you do, give us a shout. And
absolutely.
I'll arrange some hospitality for you.
I would love to take part in some Scottish hospitality, and I would, like I said, it'd be great to visit Freemasonry in Scotland. So, and thank you again so much for jumping on and taking the time to talk to us about this very, very worthy project. And if anybody wants to contact Brother Stephen and has questions about digital archiving, get in touch with me, and I will get you in touch with Stephen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brother Cameron.